Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on the Series 9 finale of Doctor Who, Hellbent. And, well, so that's how we're going out, huh? Very, very interesting episode. Just had me entirely compelled all the way through. I mean, revisiting Gallifrey, the Doctor calling out. I mean, that whole sequence at the beginning of the episode, calling out Rassilon, Lord President Rassilon, air quotes, and, you know, like every successive group of people who come to address him, and he's not having any of it. Loved that. Loved him owning that scene. Peter Capaldi owns this role. His literally drawing a line in the sand. I was kind of like wondering what he was doing there. And then, of course, as sort of the troops come in later with Rassilon, and he orders the Doctor put to death, which blew my mind. But I mean, it's Rassilon, you know. And all these soldiers stand behind the line with him. I mean, it was giving me chills and goosebumps. And he sends Rassilon, for all intents and purposes, packing. Get the hell off my planet. He surely did. Nothing else was going to happen until that happened. And he surely did. And, of course, we're dealing with the hybrid, and this was very much, as the hybrid goes, this was very much a have your cake and eating it too kind of an episode, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind how the hell Stephen Moffat pulled this off. How does he do this? Where it's in answer to everyone's speculation. People were saying, oh, the hybrid is Lady Me. I was saying the hybrid's the Doctor because of his half-human side on his mother's side. You know, there has been, I'm sure, speculations that it was Missy, that it was Clara, that, you know, there was going to be a twist in the works somewhere along the way. And per the dialogue, it can all be the hybrid. You know? I mean, in the end, I think it's more leaning toward the idea that the Doctor and Clara together, their, you know, unit, the unity between them is kind of the hybrid. Time Lord and human. It doesn't quite confirm. It doesn't come out and confirm, oh, the Doctor is human, you know, on his mother's side, like the 8th Doctor made the case in the 96 TV movie. It doesn't come out and explicitly confirm that. And I kind of like that. I like that. You know, we don't have anything concrete. It's kind of left to whatever you want to think, wherever your mind wants to, you know, sidle itself with all of these different theories. Which do you think is the more likely, you, the viewer? And I really like that. I like that there weren't any questions answered or resolved. I was kind of fearing, with the Doctors being back on Gallifrey, and even his roving down into the cloisters or whatever, you know, talking about stealing a TARDIS. You know, going into this episode, I had seen this hyperbole, these hyperbolic remarks, that this was going to change sort of the history of Doctor Who. It was going to be very divisive, and of course there was a moment. We all well know now, if you've seen the episode, where it does get somewhat divisive, even for me. I was kind of like, wow, we're really going there? I don't know. I don't know if I like this. And I'm veritably easy to please when it comes to Doctor Who. The mythology of Doctor Who. There's so much of it that it's just rife for exploration, but I like that we're playing around with themes. And there is this sense, I'm, you know, the most bang on about Doctor Who being a series that is not definable. People keep trying to implant onto it rules and regulations within which they, you know, basically purport this series has always sort of kept itself. That's hardly the case. You know, it's timey-wimey. They can go anywhere, do anything, rewrite history whenever they want. The series within, the story within the series is that there are moments in history that are locked. They're time locked. They're, you know, the explicit truth of history. These are moments that matter and cannot be changed. But it's just the fiction of the universe. Anything can be changed. The Doctor can go back, and though it's an established moment in time, time-locked, he can have an adventure with Abraham Lincoln if he damn well pleases. If it fits the story. Maybe it's not the real Abraham Lincoln. You get my point. They can do anything, go anywhere, do whatever they want. Now, as we build up and follow on from the death of Clara. I mean, seeing the way this episode began, it really was a mind warp effect, because the doctor comes into that diner and he sits down at the counter, and I'll be damned, the whole time it's the doctor telling a story to this girl who had her mind wiped of her history with the doctor. At least that's the impression. And I gotta give him just accolades as all hell for that. For that twist at the end, that no, it was the doctor whose memory was wiped. He doesn't remember a thing about Clara. She has been wiped clear. Her entire history with him. Part of me has like those heart pangs, like, oh man, it's tragic. Not only did she die, not only did she sacrifice herself for him, but she left such a penultimate impact on his brain, on his psyche, on his form and function. He spent upwards of 4 billion years mourning her before he finally came out of that confession dial, found his way out. He broke out rather than giving the Time Lords what they wanted. Information about the hybrid, because of how sorely he missed her and how responsible for her death he felt. And just tour de force performances from Capaldi, from Coleman, exploring that whole narrative, leading Clara out of that moment, just that final heartbeat, between her final heartbeats, life and death, and she kind of lives on. And you'd think I'd be really upset with that. And part of me, you know, toward the end of this episode, when Lady Me makes her, you know, appearance, and the way it all signs off in the end, them sort of gallivanting time and space with a 50s diner, I don't know how I feel about that. Quite honestly, you know, coming off of this episode, just moments before hitting record, this is something I'm going to have to sort of, you know, let format to my brain. Because I don't know whether I'm happy with that or not. I've spoken about, I hope that this finale, with some of you guys watching these videos in the comments, I've said, you know, I hope they don't undo and unravel Clara's sacrifice and how just emotional and devastating that was when she faced the Raven. And they kind of did here. But at the same time, it was so transfixed and wrapped up in Doctor Who mythology, in Gallifreyan mythology, in Time Lord mythology, and all of those things. It was exactly the balance it would have needed for me as a viewer, for my interest in Doctor Who and the history of Doctor Who, to be more than palatable and to be more than acceptable. Now, Lady Me and the, you know, moment from death, Clara, roving time and space, a la Jenny, the Doctor's daughter, or Missy, the Master, whatever. It's kind of taken me aback, and I can see why whomever made the comments, I think it might have been Moffat himself, as precursor to this episode, that it would be divisive to viewers. And I can certainly already hear the banging on about, you know, people who didn't like it. And part of me, as I say, part of me feels, at least in just the minutes after watching the episode, I'm just really kind of not sure how well I like it or not. But the thing is, because I'm that type of person who bang on, I'm easy to please with Doctor Who and playing around loosey-goosey with the history of the show and all that kind of stuff. I understand they can do anything and go anywhere. They can explore any narrative they so please. There is literally nothing, you know, holding back any of it beyond what the human imagination is, you know, finds conceivable. So there is a part of me that will sit here and tell you it makes perfect sense within the confines of that aesthetic of this series. There's no problem. Gallifrey's back. TARDISes are aplenty. Time Lords rogue though they may be, who find their way to stealing TARDISes or, you know, whatever, becoming manipulative figures, whatever happens, happens. This has happened before. It will happen again. And because, you know, Ashildr and the practically dead Clara are out there somewhere. It doesn't mean that the story goes on and it will, like there isn't a sense of closure. It's as much closure as we ever get with some of this stuff. And while it does kind of leave a door open, at the same time, Clara's time being up is assured. It's a definitive thing. It cannot be undone. But there's wiggle room for, if they want to have her back for an anniversary episode. Well, now they can. I think it's much more controversial that Ashildr is with her. She's immortal, and now she's got a frickin' TARDIS, and, I'll tell you the truth. Somebody, had basically told me there was this theory that was going around that maybe the Doctor would mind wipe Ashildr, and somehow they would implant Time Lord DNA or do something to make her be able to regenerate, or not. And he would go back in his own timeline and sort of gift, Ashildr off to his earlier incarnation, the first Doctor, and she would take on the guise, effectively, for all intents and purposes. The modern Doctor would tell the former Doctor, say she's your granddaughter Susan. Now, when I heard this, that kind of gave me goosebumps, because it would have been a way to bring Susan back into the fray. And that's something I bang on and on and on and on about. I want to see Carol Ann Ford. I want to see Susan. I want, whatever the case may be, however they might format that and do that. That's something I'm longing for. I want to see Ian Chesterton too. But I digress, But I was actually kind of excited about that possibility. And I was really on board and excited and compelled. I mean, I sat watching with my mouth agape the entirety of this episode. Only did I actually catch my breath and swallow when that moment toward the end, that reveal toward the end, occurs. That it was the Doctor who forgot Clara. And not the other way around, like you were led to believe. I mean, when you have that opening moment when waitress Clara, is not answering to that name, and she doesn't recognize that name, air quotes, and she says, tell me about her. And Capaldi does, one of the most hilarious double takes, like what? And I almost lost it just at that expression. But in that moment, I was like, oh, man, this is torture for him. He has to, talk about her. He has, so much of this, what has unfolded through the course of the episode that we're watching as viewers. He has so much of that he does remember, but she is the void amongst all of that. He can't see her. He'll never see her again. He'll never consciously be aware of her unless an anniversary episode where they make it, so that he can. And it was that much more heartbreaking to me and heart-wrenching to see the lengths to which he would go. He shoots the guy, forces him to regenerate into a woman, which, people have been saying, controversial though it may be, now we see it in action. Now we see a regeneration where Time Lord goes from Time Lord to Time Lady, and people are saying, female Doctor Who's coming and everything, which I don't think people should be as up in arms about, quite frankly, but even though it's not something I necessarily want, I'll swallow it if they do it, because this show can do anything. It can go anywhere and do anything. Only limited by the human concept of imagination is this series. So if they do that, all right, let's see what they do with it. But I mean, when you get to that point in the episode where then Clara goes back into the console room, which, by the way, I frickin' loved. First generation console room, Type 40 TARDIS or whatever it is. Never been good on remembering the minutia of, the kind of TARDIS it is. I do know they were grown, at least according to one, back history of the universe in Doctor Who. But I mean, when they're leaving and they're going to go off and have an adventure, when Clara utters that stuff about, well, we can take the long way around, I was kind of disappointed. I was kind of like, Just get her back to Gallifrey. Just let it be done. You said your goodbyes. I was crying. And in that moment, that's the most controversial aspect to me. It's like, it's probably going to be something that, as time moves on, I will learn to accept. I didn't like when 9 regenerated. I was upset by it. Eventually, I fell in love with 10. I hated Rose's leaving. She eventually came back. Billie Piper's career has gone on. These are actors. They're not dying in real life. And when they do, it's very sad and everything like that. You just appreciate how much you have, how much time you have with them in the show, in the real world, whatever. And, but it was one of those things where, eventually I will accept it for what it is. I kind of had that with the Amy Rory thing, which they get name dropped in this, in case you weren't sure where you saw that diner before. As soon as they entered Nevada, I was like, oh, we're going back here. But I mean, look what happened to them. As I've talked about before, for me personally, I felt like they kind of overstayed their welcome a little bit, but I still enjoyed the episodes beyond, the point where I thought they should have left. I still enjoyed what we got. And even though, I could have taken or left how their deaths, air quotes, being time-locked in history, I could have taken or left that. Frankly, it is what it is. That's the way it's left. That's the way this is left. That's the way the Doctor's daughter Jenny was left. That's the way Susan was left. That's the way Sarah Jane... Oh, wait, no, Sarah Jane came back. But you get my point. It's just the way it is. Love it or hate it, it's a frickin' show. The more enjoyment you can get out of it, the better. Why watch if you're not gonna enjoy it? Why bang on and hate and hate and hate? You can have episodes and stories where different themes maybe not, necessarily please you. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, look at the history of this show. They've made good decisions and they've made poor decisions. It's subjective, and like everything about this finale was goosebumps, was jaw-dropping, had me on the edge of my seat, had my mouth agape. I was stunned by everything that was happening and just absolutely riveted and entertained beyond reproach. The only moment in the entirety of it that I felt any lesser from that feeling was that scene with Ashildr and Clara taking off in their 50s diner. Kind of rubbed me the wrong way, that. But I'll get into it in time. I'll find my way to it in time. Accepting it, so to speak. And that's pretty much where I'm left by the end. I mean, looking at what is to come, we know River Song is coming back. And looks like it's going to be wacky. At least the first impression I have based on, the Next Time trailer for the Christmas episode, The Husbands of River Song, I think it's called. I'm a little bit anxious about, a little bit like this might be a step down from the quality of Series 9. Hopefully not. Hopefully it will be absolutely just gangbusters. But I mean, I feel, with the exception again, first impression, moments, minutes after watching the finale, I feel that the entirety of it, the entirety of Series 9 was on a thorough upswing, and they didn't miss a beat in this finale, with the exception of that moment. That is probably the turning point of controversy for fans, the divisiveness, most divisive moment of this episode for fans and such like that alike. I could definitely see it be, hated on and everything like that. And I'll admit, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But in a show that can go anywhere, that can do anything it wants, only leaving it to the mind of mankind, man and womankind, if you want to be PC about it, only the limitations of what we can conceive of is what this show is capable of. You cannot implant onto it any sort of designated rules. They can rewrite it whenever they want. And if you got to go to bed tonight facing the fact that somewhere out there for a limited time, Clara is still roaming free, and for all time, Ashildr is roaming free, Well, if that's the least of your worries, consider yourself lucky. You know? So for the most part, loved this finale. Was absolutely riveted to it. Was absolutely mind blown by so much of it. Even seeing the Doctor brought to boil, even seeing him fire a weapon that caused a regeneration within the confines of the narrative they were telling. And the building up of 4 billion years of heartache, of devastation. And as I talked about in the previous episode discussion video, Clara is just the companion of the day. If this series were depicting his companion to be Susan, to be Rose, to be Jamie, to be Zoe, to be Victoria, to be Turlo, to be whomever the companion would be at the moment, this would be that companion's story. So hate on Clara if you must, but I mean, it's just so much wasted time, you know. And onward and upward from here is all I can say, is what I'm left with, because Series 9 was bang on, was gangbusters, and it didn't miss a beat in this finale as far as I'm concerned, even with that moment that did take me aback. And, but damn, did Clara look good in that waitress outfit. I digress. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you thought of the series finale of Series 9 of Doctor Who, Hell-Bent, if you've seen it. If you were as compelled and riveted as I was by all the Gallifreyan, Time Lord hybrid stuff. I know some of you out there probably weren't going to be too thrilled that, you know, Maisie was coming back. I think she did very well in her performance. It was, you know, she looked the best she did in this role and had much... you know, sort of a balance, I thought, of the gravitas and sort of the ominous nature of that character. We've seen both in her other former appearances throughout Series 9, and I felt like this was a clever mixture of all of those things. She managed to bring forth an evolved me, if you will. I could see all of those things representative in the way she performed that character. But yeah, let me know, as I say, you know, love it or hate it. Anything goes in the comments below. Just, you know, explain a little bit about why you either loved it or hated it. And otherwise, I hope this video finds you well. That'll be pretty much it for me on this. I mean, I've been going on forever anyway. And bring on Christmas. Otherwise, I hope this video finds you well. Happy holidays all, and I'll catch you later. Peace.